Today we're talking about speed. That's the hot topic. Bryson
Yeah.
DeChambeau wins every other tournament. They're just long hitters, and that's all that's talked about on TV, it seems like. Now with that comes some bad information.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so today we're going to bust 3 myths about speed. The first one is that your body's like a coiling spring. The second one is that your feet really shouldn't move and you need to keep those really quiet and stable on the ground. And then the third one is my Brandel Chambly favorite, lifting your left heel. Not to say that that's always the worst advice, but it's way overblown and as significant. We're going to talk about why.
Yep.
So first, let's do the coiling spring one.
Okay.
This is my favorite one.
Okay.
Remember this?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you're even aiming the right way. Good job.
Okay.
So the idea that your body's like a coiling spring, and the more you wind it up, the more energy you'll be able to transfer, the faster you'll be able to move on the way down is the idea. So that is pretty flawed from the start, but let's have you try to do that. So on this backswing, don't change your knee flex, aim your feet real straight, don't turn your hips at all, turn your shoulders as far as you can go.
That's as far as
Do you guys get that face he just made?
that.
Yeah, you're old, but still. So that one's really challenging for a bunch of different ways. To start with the idea, though, like the premise of it is that if you're wound up really tight like that, you're just gonna turn so much faster on the way down.
Big problem. Relax, that won't happen.
I'm not sure how. Yeah, exactly. So I'm not sure how that would really work. We're not really built like rubber bands or a slingshot. So a slingshot, you pull that thing back. Wish I had one right now. That'd be a ton of fun. And then shoot this. What would happen then is that the rubber band that's being pulled here would just sling forward. And that is very elastic. That's not how people really are, though. If it was, then if I wanted to throw this ball, I could just bend my externally rotate my shoulder as much as I could, extend my shoulder as well, my arm, and pull this back as far as I went. And then I should just be able to relax, and this would go slinging forward. Let me try.
Not just because you're not mean.
Not much really happened, huh?
Nope.
Yeah. So the idea is just flawed from the beginning. It sounds nice in theory, I suppose, but that's not really how it works. And then honestly, how we've measured PGA Tour players and the best amateur golfers that roll through GOLFTEC, there's really no correlation between hip turn at the top of the swing across skill levels. It's a slight, if anything, negative non-correlation. It's not worth talking about. Shoulder turn at the top, though, is. So the best golfers that we have turned their shoulders more, but their hips the same amount as everyone else.
Correct.
So that's the piece to probably get right. So myth number one is don't do that, and then the idea doesn't work. So go ahead and set up again.
Sure.
I took your ball, so grab another one.
Want me to hit this one?
No, don't hit this one. So you notice, Patrick, I love when you do that demonstration at the top because I know how horrible that feels. So go ahead and do that again. It's hard, right?
Yeah.
The longer I talk, the more
trying to make it
awkward it
longer.
is. Yeah. So one, he's got a problem even from this view of how high he can raise the butt end of the club because he's essentially in a body cast from the waist down. He hasn't enabled himself to turn much, so every segment of his pelvis up to all the vertebrae up to his neck is really challenging to move forward. I notice you're not still
I need a
holding
break.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So
need to breathe.
it's hard to move that way. You can't go very far.
Yeah.
So if I can't move the butt end of the club any farther, the only way to make it continue to move is to start to overflex your elbows relative to, say, the best golfers. And that would enable you to make a bigger swing. The other one that you're doing a lot is extending your lead wrist a ton, and the radial deviation or the wrist cock. You're adding a lot of that. Yeah. And that would be a way to make a longer swing. One of my friends, Johnson Wagner, who plays on the PGA Tour, comes to mind as someone who really has a hard time with this. He's the coiled spring analogy, and the way he makes his swing longer is just to radially deviate his wrist a ton. Yeah. And he's one of the shortest hitters doing the coiled spring analogy, even though he's a big dude for sure. Yeah. So it just falls flat in every way. Then the last part that's important would be probably the safety of your back. So when you're trying to lock down your pelvis and not move that at all and wind up your shoulders as well, there's a lot of strain that really happens down in your lumbar spine and in your lower back.
Yeah.
Michelle Wee comes to mind as someone else who prescribed or followed this subscription of how to play and had a ton of pain and problems. And who knows what those are really from, but other players, Jason Day comes to mind as someone who doesn't turn his hips nearly close to the PGA Tour average for any of his shots. Awesome golfer, probably not the best way to try to play. There's just easier ways to do it. And most of my opinion based on that is coming from biomechanists, PhDs,
sure.
orthopedic surgeons. They're the ones saying this is a bad idea. It's not really the viewpoint of just me. So anything else to add on the coiling spring? Are you a coiling spring?
I try not to be. No.
Were you 10 years ago?
No, not
No.
even then.
No,
but
still? Okay.
regardless of that, the only other piece I'd add to that is when you try to do that, not only do you limit the length of the swing as you were outlining, but also it's a big problem that leads to a bunch of slicing too. So if you slice, definitely don't want to try to coil like a spring either.
Well, you want to demonstrate that since now you've talked about it. Now you get to finish the story. That's why we do these longer forms. So it's difficult for Patrick to have the butt end of the club high enough, but also have enough depth to the stroke to then on the way down keep the shaft far enough in to not slice. That would be step number one. If I wanted to slice as much as I could, I'd aim my hips, my stance, my shoulders 45 degrees to the left, and on the backswing it wouldn't turn at all. And it would be impossible for me not to have the face open to the path, or at least have the swing direction programmed significantly to the left. Good. That's good, Patrick. Good piece of advice.
Glad I could derail you.
Nope, you did great. I forget stuff all the time, you know that. So the next one, number 2, I didn't forget this one. Your feet shouldn't move. You know how you probably can talk all about this. Most of Patrick's day is spent teaching all of our brand new coaches how to get through their day and teach great golf lessons and navigate the simple aspects of the job that you wouldn't expect, like how to just really be good at it. How many times do you get somebody say something like, who's a brand new coach who comes to us and talks about how your feet should be stable, or don't move them around, or anything like that?
Yeah, keep them aim straight, don't move them, all those bad things, for sure.
Okay. So there is this school of thought that you should hit hit shots where all the way through your feet should just look really. I'll use the dogmatic terms I hear on Golf Channel: stable, quiet. They don't move. Everything looks so graceful when you just have a follow through where your trail foot moves up onto your toe, your lead foot stays almost equally balanced all the way through the middle of it. Chop it in half, not much changes in there. But then you watch Bryson DeChambeau, you watch Justin Thomas, you watch guys who have a ton of speed. The first way to do it is make a backswing where you turn a ton. Covered that. The second one, though, is to make sure that when you're coming into the golf ball that you're flexing your knees enough, you're bending your pelvis forward, you're trying to almost grip the ground with your feet to get ready for that next part. There might be some times where your feet slide around on the backswing, or especially through the ball, like we're going to actually practice here in a second. But the idea that your feet should be really stable, quiet, all those nondescript phrases for just not moving very much, I think fall flat really quick when you watch the best players on the game. Jordan Spieth is someone who comes to mind. He started playing well again. His feet are moving around a lot. I wouldn't
Ankle
do it
rolls
like
out.
his. We can probably even talk about a good way or a bad way. One way to negatively have your feet move around a lot would be to have your lead foot very square, and then as you're trying to turn and move yourself very quickly through the shot, it's hard not to roll your ankle, and his foot turns out too. Be better to probably just start with it out 20 degrees or so, and you can eliminate a lot of strain on your knee and your ankle. Now the last one though, your feet are going to move, but the idea that lifting your left heel as a good idea for distance. Got any thoughts on that?
In the
I know it's off the cuff. On the backswing.
We're talking backswing, right?
Yeah, our friend Brandel comes up with this one. This is a key separator of skill, and I wish that were the case because we watch millions of golfers come to us for help.
Sure, yeah. No, the biggest problem I would anticipate with somebody trying to lift their left heel in the backswing, it is a way to increase more turn, but most people don't understand what he's saying correctly, even though what he's saying isn't necessarily right. But it leads to moving the hips or the pelvis away from the target, which complicates just how you hit the ball and where you hit the ground in relation to it.
Yep, so fair enough. And then even the idea that if you lift your left heel, it does make you more mobile potentially, but Patrick's idea is really that the hip shift or the sway is also a piece that's usually coupled together with that. That is a much more challenging move to pull off. But what about the idea, well then if lifting your heel just a little bit is good, lifting it a lot must be really helpful, right? You can walk up and down the range at Topgolf and find people who do that all the time. That more isn't always better for any of these ideas. But lifting your left heel isn't really necessary to be super mobile. There are better ways to choose how to be mobile. First one is just turn your feet outward at address. If you're playing golf or you're watching some of your friends and their feet are straight like this, or even turned inward a little bit. I've seen that before. Some people try to turn their trail foot inward in a way to almost help them with that coiling spring. That's bad advice. That's the start of being slow, not fast.
Yeah, the railroad track analogy that you hear people talk about at address, set your feet straight to the railroad track. I've even seen, like you suggested, where people try to turn the toes in as a way to reduce their hip slide as a way to do it in the backswing.
Yep.
So I would look at just trying to flare them out. Would you say about 15? 20 degrees is all you really need. You don't need to be ridiculous with it.
And that starts it turns your knee outward as well, and it's the start of making your pelvis more mobile, so you can just make a longer swing and execute all of those parts. Those are better ways to make yourself more mobile. I've never really met anyone who needed more power, who you wanted to lift that really just needed to lift their heel. That wasn't the answer. It was something else that they could have done from their waist down that would have given them enough mobility to do this. I say that with the caveat of, if you do lift your heel, that's okay. It's not necessarily wrong for more speed, necessarily. But it's the rust on the bridge that you might watch with Bryson DeChambeau. He's trying to lift his heel, and even his is coming off the ground maybe a half of an inch. It's a small amount. And he was able to drive the ball 300 yards without doing that anyway. So it isn't, don't look at something that's that small and minuscule in the whole puzzle. That is not what's happening. It's like the idea that shifting off the ball is a good way to swing faster too.
Right.
If you're worried about speed, I'd worry about address, and I'd be worrying much more about how I get to the top of my swing than I would be how the beginning of it starts. That's not where the magic sauce is at. So let's practice the second one out of those, which was keeping your feet still. So when you do watch Justin Thomas, Bryson DeChambeau coming through the ball from the point in time where the shaft's parallel to the ground on the way down through, they are trying to almost leap off the ground. Justin Thomas's feet
He's a really good
off
example.
the ground. Right. What that's helping you do is go down to 6 again. So the butt end of the club in the middle of the grip, from this point on, need to keep moving upward. A good way to do that is get yourself off the ground. That helps provide a bunch of speed into the club as your wrists start to change, flex from the radial deviation down to the ulnar. So it's just going faster. So this is one that I see most people get wrong too. In our Swing True study that we've done, and I'm sure we can pop a link into something in there, the backward bending that the best players have through the shot is also really directly a piece of this. Bend your, straighten your legs, bend your shoulders backward, keep your hips really level. That's how you make a PGA Tour like swing. But the worst golfers hit and have their knees the most flexed, their ankles the most flexed, their arms the most bent, and their shoulders the most forward through the shot.
It's like Mr. Heavencamp from Caddyshack right there.
Yeah, it's a good movie, but bad scene for sure. That's what makes it fun. Yeah, good demo of that one. So you've got a way to help you bend yourself backward more is like literally jumping off the ground. So on this one, let's practice how you might tell someone to do this. So I'd start with a simple way to do it would be no shot, back up, there you go. Move the shaft down to where it's just parallel to the ground. And then at this point in time, you're gonna straighten your legs and extend your ankles like you'd be going off of like a ski jump. And get
trying
yourself
to get on my
up there.
toes.
Straighten yourself out as much as you can from your ankles all the way up to your neck. Got it. Then when you feel like you can do that okay, you'll start feeling like you're using the ground as a way to leverage yourself. The ground's not really doing anything there. It just sits there. You need to do the hard work and make yourself move upward. When you're ready to do that, I'd start in the same place in your swing and just hit this shot, trying to do the extending parts of your knees, ankles, and your back, and just start ripping those things off the ground. What you should notice is a really shallow angle of attack. You might not notice with Patrick, but his club didn't even hit the turf.
Hit it real thin.
This is a telltale sign if you're struggling with gigantic divots and you don't hit it very far. The speed tip is really a way to help shallow out your angle of attack too. So good demo. Now on this one, I know you're just hitting a 7-iron, but to hit this 7-iron 180 yards like I've got this set up, I want to see, can you try to hit this with enough club head speed where you might have to carry it like 200 yards. And I'd put all the emphasis into that winding up, not the coiling spring, but wind up your backswing. And then like literally on this one, just jump as you smash this one out there. So a thin hit like
A
you'd
little toey,
expect,
thin, but
high, and we'll see how far that carries. Honestly, for you, just if you want to hit it farther, that's the first thing I would do. If you're at all competent with hitting it straight and you want to hit it farther, speed. This is your first piece of speed, because you've got to be able to pull that grip up faster. So you pull the grip up without having to pull your arms towards you to shrink up the radius of the stroke. Keep it long and use yourself to bend backward. Simple stuff. But jumping off the ground to practice this with a 7-iron, practice it with a driver. Can you leave the ground on this one?
maybe.
Wind it up and then jump. You got it. And another thin hit. That one's just getting higher and higher too. His club is almost, I'm guessing your angle of attack is
further,
significantly less than, well, yeah, that's a good 7-iron, 226. I think there's a water hazard back there, just a cart path. Might have rolled down.
Going to the halfway house.
So that's a good way to practice on the range. I would expect thin hits if you do it really well, and shots that go higher if you do hit the middle of the face that way. If you're still hitting fat, big divots, hit behind the ball, that should be the way, the ball and the club's way of telling you, you are still doing it wrong. You need to actually do more of this, not less. Anything else you'd cover as a speed myth?
No, the only thing I would suggest, if you're trying to bend yourself backwards and you feel like you're almost thinning it or topping it, that's just going to encourage you to keep your arm straighter as you do it as well. So that'd be another little piece to add into it. Very common, I see students who learn to bend backwards, who always hit with their elbows flexed. They start doing the body motions better, but they forget about the elbow piece.
Good job, good pro tip. So hope you enjoyed this. There are lots of myths in speed. This will help you sort through some of the nonsense that you might hear on TV. If you did enjoy this, go ahead and click the thumbs up button right now. And don't forget to join the GOLFTEC community for exclusive content, offers, and to book a lesson or a club fitting. Check out the link below to create a free GOLFTEC account. Thanks, Patrick.
You got it.